I wanted to take the first few minutes here just to share, kind of the origin story for the Fundamental Health Pledge, how, as it says in the title, we have grown it now to 27,000 startups that are eligible to have their mental health, or for founders, to have their mental health covered, and how we grew to over 250 VCs that have now taken the pledge, and then also what we're planning to do next. Right. Yeah. So I was I got recruited by SVB actually, to start a company in the fundamental health space, and this was a couple of years ago. They noticed, they had at that time 35,000 venture-backed startups that bank with them, and they looked around the market and they saw that there really wasn't any solution that was specifically focused on entrepreneur mental health. And their thesis was that there's going to be a correlation between entrepreneur mental health and business outcomes, and not just that it's also like a social responsibility of everybody in the ecosystem to make sure that founders are watching their mental health, because if they watch their mental health, that leads to better employee mental health, because they'll have more empathy for their team members. That leads to hopefully better business outcomes and more job creation and innovation. And so yeah, they recruited me to basically be the CEO and founder of this company. Ended up calling it Pioneer Mind. And about I would say about a year later or so, the SVB collapse happened. Right, as some of you all may be aware, folks that had their money in their SVB accounts, the money was stuck. The FDIC took over, and there was a weekend there in March where people didn't know if they would be able to access their money. And startups didn't know specifically if they would be able to access their money. The founders didn't know. And I saw a tweet from a founder who said that they had to stop their founder friend from committing suicide because they weren't sure if they could make payroll on Monday, because they just couldn't access their funds. And so I was already working in this kind of space of founder mental health, building a platform there, and seeing this tweet, I called up my advisor, Brad Baum, and we said, look, we have to do something about this. We're as entrepreneurs, and prior he had helped start a company called Humans Anonymous, which had like a Founders Anonymous group. And so we said, look, we are kind of at the center of this, and we can really create a movement here, and let's do something that serves founders and therefore serves their team members, their employees, the staff, and serves the economy at large. And so that was kind of one realization we had. And the second realization we had is that we didn't have to like make something super fancy to launch this pledge. And I think Alim, you've already introduced what the pledge is, right? Or should I kind of give it into like an overview?
The founder mental health pledge, or
yes,
yeah. I've introduced it briefly. You can give us a quick elevator pitch.
Okay, so the founder mental health pledge is basically a pledge that investors, founders, other leaders take to say that they're going to treat founder mental health and wellness as a business expense and a business priority. And again, the idea there being that if founders are watching their mental health proactively, then as they scale their companies, it'll mean better mental health for their employees because they'll have more empathy around mental health challenges and wellness challenges. It'll mean, again, better business outcomes, because we feel when employees are doing their best, they perform their best, and then which leads to more job creation and innovation. And so that was the general idea. And all the data, as you're seeing here on the screen, like all the data shows that founders have 38%, they're 30% more likely to suffer from depression, ADHD, bipolar anxiety. They're 3% of them, 3% more likely to have suicide attempts, and 1.7% more likely to have psychiatric hospitalization.
I just want to stop you right here real quick and just be a little vulnerable. Like, I have been to the hospital many, many, many times because of how hard I work. My parents have taken me to the doctor for GERD, for acid reflux, I thought I was going to die. Like, I wouldn't even use my computer. I swear on my life, like I would keep my laptop down. I'd tuck it under the couch when I lived at my mom and dad's. I'd be like, Mom and Dad, I don't want to go to work today. Like, I need to find another job. My parents own a grocery store. And you know what they would do to help me get out of that? Like, I was depressed. My dad said, go work behind the fucking cash register, and that's going to change your life. You're going to see how people who have no money come in and they scrape for change to buy alcohol from me. They come and scrape for change to buy cigarettes from me. And you're going to see the richest people have Rolexes on, pull up in a Mercedes, come drink their problems away. And that's going to really change your life and make things better for you. So my parents, they're like, anxiety, they're Indian. They don't know what anxiety is. They're like, that's not a thing. My dad would send me to the cash register, be like, take 5 days off work, go work the shop this week. This is just 2 years ago. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I don't work behind the cash register. But I want to be real with you guys and just tell you that like my life was, you guys see me on YouTube, you see me making these things. I feel happy when I'm making these videos, but you know, life is really damn hard. And I just want to relate to all of you that you're not alone. Like I'm right here with you. Go ahead, Naveed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and yeah, anxiety and all these things are very real, and some people do self-medicate, right? Like there's all this stuff that happens, but these things are very, very real, and they have to be taken very seriously. Anyways, yeah. So we had this realization that hey, we're in a moment of time where founders are already suffer from mental health challenges, and mental wellness challenges, and then the collapse, the financial collapse, made it worse, as we were seeing on Twitter. And for every person that tweets like that, there's probably 1,000 that aren't, right, sharing. And at the same time, we also saw General Catalyst released a Google Doc, literally, that was a pledge that they started, where they said, hey, FDIC, if you support Silicon Valley Bank, even though our even though our startups are currently pulling the money out of Silicon Valley Bank, we'll make sure that they return back to you after, they will return back to Silicon Valley Bank after things are handled properly by the FDIC. And that pledge, was signed by a bunch of VCs, and of course, General Catalyst is like a very influential VC. They're, one of the top ones out there. But we thought, what, if they can do it, why can't we? Like, we'll just start a Google Doc too, Let's not worry about putting up a website or any of those things.
Real quick, I think that might have been skimmed over. Like Naveed literally just made a Google Doc, and that was his MVP, right, Naveed? Like
that was just the MVP, Google Doc. Yeah. Talk about low code or no code, right? Like it was literally a Google Doc. Yeah, and then in the Google Doc, Brad came up with the wording for what the pledge would say, right? Which is effectively what I mentioned earlier, which is, hey, it's a fiduciary responsibility. It's a business priority. It should be a business expense. And then me as a pledge taker agreed to encourage startups and founders that I work with to treat it as such. And there's more obviously words there in the pledge, but that was the gist of it. So we had literally the Google Doc. I think I created I think initially we didn't even have a domain. I created like a bit.ly or something. Yeah, actually it was a bit.ly. Yeah, it was like bit.ly, shortlink.com/founder-pledge or whatever, short link it was. And that was our MVP. And we just linked I don't even think it was a type form. I think it was maybe it was a type form. Yeah, we linked a type form or something from the Google Doc that said, okay, hey, if you want to take the pledge, fill this out. And then we literally would, at the bottom of the Google Doc, underneath the pledge, we would just manually upload, put in the logos, literally just editing the Google Doc. That's all we were doing, right? And then they were like, well, so anyways, that was the MVP. Now, where I got lucky, or I guess maybe, people make their own luck, but SVB actually was very instrumental in getting the pledge going. Interestingly enough. So a mentor of mine, Aaron Gretchenberg, who was the founder of FCB Capital, he's very, very passionate about mental health. Recently retired. He actually came back to SVB Capital now. And I talked to him about this after Brad and I spoke, and we created this Google Doc. And he loved the idea. He said, hey, I'm going to help you spread this thing. And he sent an email to a bunch of top tier VCs with the link, asking them to take the pledge, including Brad Feld. the founder of Techstars and Foundry Group. And Brad is somebody who is already very passionate and very vocal about founder mental health before anybody else really was. And so he, a lot of the folks honestly ignored the email. Some replied, with niceties and stuff like, but didn't take any action. But Brad took action. He's like, you know what? Let's get on a call quickly. I'm going to write about this in my blog. We're going to release a blog post tomorrow and we're going to make this thing happen.
So Naveed, that's like one thing I introduced everyone to was like, you're just a normal guy, Naveed. Like, you're like, yeah, I know. You're just a normal guy. You don't have superpowers, but you were able to get in front of that one person who helped you take this to the next level. Like, how did that happen? Like, was it luck? Was it destiny? Did you build your own luck? Like, how did you get Brad to back you?
Well, I think it was like a perfect moment in time, right? It was because, again, Brad Feld has been really passionate about entrepreneurship and mental health for a long time. He's been vocal about his own mental health journey and all the things he's gone through as an operator and as an investor. And so I think we just, and then the introduction came from somebody that's super credible. It was just, luck and timing and hard work kind of all coming together at the same time, I think that's probably how that happened. And so he, we talked to him. I think it was either over email I think it actually was over email. He just asked a bunch of questions. And then he wrote a blog post that basically I think that it was released the next day during that same SVB weekend about all this stuff is happening. And yeah, it got picked up by the press, so, obviously people saw it through Brad's blog. And then an advisor of mine at Pioneer Mind said, hey, I can get you a fortune story after she saw that, this was starting to, gain traction. We got a fortune story, and then we got to speak on the main TechCrunch podcast called Equity Pod. And, since then it's been covered by lots of different media outlets, but now we have, and I'll speak to a little bit more about how we got to this. But now, as Alim, I think mentioned, we have about 250 venture capitalists that have taken the pledge, which is like massive. It's VCs all over the globe, including Y Combinator and Techstars and Antler and Founder Institute. All of the accelerators, basically, even Neo, all of them have taken it. And then General Catalyst, Benchmark, a bunch of really prominent VCs have taken the pledge. And we were literally like we had this, press traction. We had this Brad Feld post. People were seeing it to that. And then we literally sent like thousands of cold emails that same weekend to VC saying, hey, look, this is happening. Do you want to be part of this? And we started getting responses from like Jeff Cavalier, people that were like very prominent, right? And they got behind this just because they saw, again, it was like capturing a moment in time, right? We didn't need a fancy website. We have a fancy website now. You probably saw it, but we didn't need any of that stuff, It was literally a Google Doc and right moment in time. And now, I'll just kind of wrap it up because I know we're at 2:15 and I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for questions. But now we've launched the term sheet clause. So there's actually many VCs that have actually modified their investment terms to include the fundamental health pledge as a mandatory clause in there. Okay,
Wow.
Including the opportunity fund. We are working on research with like 2 of the top or 3 of the top universities in the world around that are like focused on psychology, psychiatry, and entrepreneurship. And so hopefully we're looking forward to announcing that soon. Every week I get a text from somebody or one of my team members in the pledging. And if you turn the pledge into a nonprofit, by the way, so it's fully a nonprofit now. And pretty much every week we get a text from somebody that says, hey, I was at this, big conference or whatever, and somebody presented the pledge on stage, fully organically it's happening. We want to do grants for founders that haven't raised money yet, so they can also still invest in their mental health and wellness. And our saying is hustle responsibly, right? So Alan knows it's I work pretty hard, right? So the goal, the thing here is not, hey, let's take it all easy and let's go fuck off in Hawaii or whatever, right? That's not the point of the pledge. The pledge is that, hey, the startup journey is going to be a roller coaster, and know that, accept that, put on the seatbelt, whatever that means for you, right? That might mean, hey, I go to masterminds like this, right? It may mean that, I go to a founder group session. It may mean that I go to therapy, or it may mean I have a coach. It may mean I use an app, right? I do meditation. Maybe I make sure I balance my family life and my, and et cetera. And so, yeah, that's basically the pledge. Yeah. And we have an amazing team. Alan Woodruff, who's the executive director. We have Brad Baum, who's the co-creator with me. And then, of course, we have, Kylie and other amazing team members. And all of our advisors. We've gotten now all the major players, Andy Dunn, Michael Freeman, all these people that are very, very prominent and the most prominent voices in space have all gotten behind our movement. And we're just getting started. We're now a year and 2 months in, I guess. And, yeah, it's like, feels like day one. One thing I'll share, yeah, is like all these things, are like a muscle you can build. That's a resiliency, the key point I want y'all to understand is like the reason I'm doing this is because, if you watch your mental health proactively, it's a huge strength. Not only can you, try to avoid some of the, traps and some of the lows, but also you can actually like succeed more. You can actually do more if you practice. So it's a kind of counterintuitive. People think that watching your mental health means that you're going to be less productive. It's actually the opposite, which is why I care about this and care about this for founders. But yeah, happy to take questions.
Does anybody have a question? If so, would you mind coming up to the front and speaking into the mic just so we can hear you? Renee, please.
Sure. My name is Renee Gotti. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and my app has to deal with criminal justice, providing transparency and also providing people with an opportunity to completely be in control of their situation when they have encountered something that they may be guilty of or not. Basically, my app is something where if you are encountered with the police, you can tap your phone 4 times. It will instantly lock your phone, audio and video record everything that's going on, go to my cloud. At the same time, prior to that, you have already secured 3 attorneys that you want to have notified of where your GPS is. You'll have 3 bail bondsmen that will also know where your GPS is. And you have already been pre-approved for a signature loan for $2,500 or $5,000, which is a loan that is secured, unfortunately, by high interest loans, basically legal loan sharks, right? But they get something that they want, which is a pseudo secured loan because they believe these people are going to pay them because they have to show up at court. There's more to that, but that's the brief story. My question is, I'm very interested because I know resiliency is something that's very, very needed in this world today, right? And a lot of people have been tricked by the internet that life is cushioning when it's not, right? And we have so many bright young men and women out here that need to have someone to talk to them, not coddle them, but talk to them. And it sounds like founders, I understand exactly. I own my own law firm. So I feel alone in the world half the time, Even coming here today, I was so excited because I could just meet people that were excited about something that nobody else is excited about, right? And you're just like, no, my ideas are good. Right?
What question do we have for Naveed?
My question is, you have a niche area and that's something that you teach on Ambitious, right? So my question is, I believe in the law of averages, and you talked about how you got the one guy that backed you up, right? I don't remember his name.
Brad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Law of averages, and you also talked about a podcast. So I want to know, how do you find, so the podcast to me is what I call a little power. That little power, that thing that you don't really think is going to explode, but it did. Is that right? Is that how you met Brad?
How'd that happen?
Sorry, Brad was through one of my advisors.
Okay. So how do you find those little things because I think, Alim, you talked about, was it luck or was it created luck? You talked about a lot of hard work, and I believe that hard work is luck, right? I need to know though how I don't spend my wheels doing hard work in the wrong places. Could you give me an insight on that? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can talk about kind of my, secret to networking, I guess, which is probably where the question is leading to, right? Because I already had these relationships and I was able to leverage them to get other more targeted relationships. So what I try to do is genuinely, like, when somebody reaches out to me, if it's a peer, somebody I'm mentoring, whatever it is, or even somebody who's like a mentor of mine, right? Or somebody who's kind of quote unquote ahead of me, I always just try to be helpful without expecting anything in return, like at all. That is and I genuinely love it. Like I genuinely love being able to be helpful. And it's for a very selfish reason, actually, because it makes me feel validated, right? So a lot of people say, oh, well, I like to be helpful because I'm, whatever, a good person and, that's how my parents raised me. No, like for me, it's like, it makes me feel valued, like, uh, am I only doing it for that reason? No, right? But there's something benefit for me as long as that other person is benefiting. And I've done this so often now throughout my startup journeys and career that karma seems to come back, you know? So it just seems to happen that at the right moment, the right connection shows up, right? But as you said, I don't think it's just luck, right? It's like, I've been in the startup industry now since I'm 38 now. So since I was like, 22 or something, right? I had my first venture back startup when I was, dropping out of grad school. And since then, this is what I've tried to do is just like be helpful to people as I can be in my own little way. And it seems to me, and maintain relationships over long periods of time, and without any expectation of return. But just somehow, the way karma works, I think, is like it just comes back.
Mike, I got one more question for you, Naveed. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Here. Hey, so I was really inspired by how your story came to be. When you started as an MVP, it was really just a Google Doc. But then all of a sudden, when you met your partner, a blog post happened. Then media, you got approached by Fortune, and then all these different podcasts and things like that. So there was like this big explosion of attention that came through. You had a very minimum viable product. When that explosion hit, did you feel prepared? Was the excitement matched with anxiety to catch up to the level of attention that you were getting from the thing that you were building? And how did you kind of find even ground in that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the main thing was I wasn't doing it alone. So I had Brad Baum, my co-creator, with me. And we would literally just like talk every day, and we would just say, okay, hey, what do we want to do next? What are we going to post about? How are we going to make sure we keep the momentum? And me and him, still work on it regularly, right? And we have an executive director now who supports us on the daily stuff. But yeah, I think having that individual that was a co-conspirator, co-creator, to me was really, key to making sure that I don't that I keep that seatbelt on for myself.
Yeah, that is a good point. And then like Naveed, I guess last question, just kind of building off that. Does anybody else have one for Naveed? Isaiah. Yeah. Isaiah, and then as I'm bringing up, like, did you iterate on the MVP? How has the MVP evolved from the Google Doc today? I think it's still pretty similar, right? Or is it different now?
Well, no, I mean we're now like a full working organization, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you saw the website that was actually donated by an organization. They rebranded the whole thing. I came up with like some pretty ugly logo initially, but we like even on the MVP, we started adding things like, okay, hey, we're starting to get stories now, founders who are sharing their stories. So let's add a story section to the Google Doc, right? Oh man, we're getting all these people that are saying, hey, here, can you share resources with me for fundamental health? So we said, okay, let's add a stories doc. Let's add a resources doc that's linked to the Google Doc. So it's literally a bunch of Google Docs that are chained together, and now it's an actual, proper website with a with a database and, everything is automated, right? Like it's not, you don't have to manually upload a new pledge when it comes in. Everything is,
Got you.
streamlined.
Real quick,
But
we
yeah,
got
it was
one,
basically
we
a bunch of
got,
Google Docs tied together.
we got one last question from Isaiah, and then we'll be respectful of your time. Go ahead, Isaiah.
So not sure if you've experienced this, but if you have, how do you deal with the feeling or perceived feeling of failing or not getting to where you want to?
Oh man, yeah, I've failed more times than I can. I'll fail to count the number of times I've failed. So yeah, I guess like, how do I think about failure? That's a good question. I kind of don't worry about it. You know, uh,
But that's
yeah, I
after
kind of just like,
a lot of times, like probably a lot of us in this room have never failed before, right?
oh yeah, that's after many, many failures. Because like, if I worried about all my failures, then I would be back in bed depressed, like, so yeah, I just say, hey, you know what? Like, what did I learn from it? Have I maintained my relationships through it, right? That's the most important currency you have, especially in the technology, in any world, but especially in the technology world. And then, yeah, just like my brain just moves on to the next thing. But yes, that's after failing multiple times. And that wasn't always the case, right? Like, I definitely have gone through very deep, debilitating depression because of failure. And I realized that it didn't go into that experience, like didn't really help. What helps is being able to, yes, take some time off, but then being able to kind of get your hands dirty again. And so that's what I try to do. Like, if there's a failure, try to get my hands dirty again as soon as possible. And just like enjoy building, and just do cool shit that like actually matters to you. I think as long as you're doing that, even if you fail, like you still learn and you still made a dent in the world.
Hell yeah, Naveed. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, take care.